So as a business scales, it inhibits its ability to treat people like miracles in direct proportion to that scale, which is good news for us because it means that small businesses and entrepreneurs have such a massive advantage. It's why every major innovation in the history of humanity has come from a small group of people. Apple was tiny, Google was tiny, OpenAI is tiny. It's these tiny, nimble, small, very meritocratic organizations, and they move mountains and they change the way that we engage with each other. And then they experience all the success and they explode in size. And Google now, I've been to Google's corporate office. They flew me down there to create training videos for them back when I had a Google Ads agency. And you've never seen a corporation more run by lawyers and attorneys than Google.
Hi, I'm Zarina and welcome to the Grownlearn Podcast. Beyond these conversations, I actively connect investors with high growth opportunities. Right now, I'm working on projects seeking strategic partners. If you're an investor, PE firm, or family office looking for scalable ventures, let's talk. Book a call at grownlearn.org to explore these opportunities. Today, I'm speaking to Kasim, the one and only Kasim. He has a family name, but you'll see it in the description. We're going to be speaking about building 7-8-figure companies by delegating and hiring the 1% talent. I want to know everything about growing using, the right hiring techniques. Hi, Kasim.
Hi, Zarina. Thanks for having me on your show. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Would you like to share a bit of your story? I know you've gone a long way. You're an owner of a few companies. You've exited a few. Would you like to share a bit of your path? I know it's a broad question, but just speak about whatever you feel like.
Yeah, I'm a welfare baby, which is something I'm kind of proud of in a really odd way. I was raised by a blind single mother on Social Security disability in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And I thought as a little kid that money was going to make me happy. And so from the age of 7 years old, I've been an entrepreneur. I started by buying candy at a local gas station for 10 cents and selling it at school for 25 cents. And my business ideas have not gotten any better since then. Uh, and somewhere along the way, I did start making money, and I did find out that it doesn't make you happy, but it does make you safe. I think that we shame entrepreneurs for wanting to be wealthy, and I think that there's something about that needs to be course corrected, because I think that um, it's really difficult to live into your full potential until you feel safe.
Yeah.
And so if anybody's listening to this, I'd like to encourage that uh, it's an okay thing to want, you know.
Mm,
Um, you
yeah.
don't need to justify it. Everybody always feels like, oh, I need to add a nonprofit, or I need to add a purpose or a mission or a vision. And I think those things are awesome as ends unto themselves. But, so is just making sure that you've got enough. And now that I have enough, I'm going after more. I have a portfolio of 15 businesses. I call myself a business builder. I think I'm quite the stereotype as far as entrepreneurs are concerned. I like starting businesses. I do not like running them. And so the thing that I've gotten best at is finding really extraordinary talent. I start a business, I build it up, and then I put somebody else in charge, and then I walk off and into the sunset, and I start my next business. And that might be the thing that I'm world class at, which is just finding and cultivating talent.
Mm. While you were speaking about entrepreneurs being shamed about wanting money, it got me thinking about there's a saying that what's the difference between a deer and let's say a dog hunting a deer? It's that one is running for their life and the other one is running for food or something like that. So it's basically what the motivation is behind your um, the reason you're aiming for money. And for actually a lot of very successful entrepreneurs have started from humble beginnings, and I've interviewed quite a lot of them, so it is a very good motivator to start with. So that's just my 5 cents on it. Okay, so let's talk about your hiring strategies. When did you realize you were better not in the business or outside of it?
Yeah, I learned very quickly and very early that I am limited in terms of my capabilities. And I think some of it, to be honest with you, just stemmed from, I don't want to use the word laziness. I'd like to be more forgiving to myself, but an aversion to that which is mundane and or repetitive. Like I don't like doing the same thing every day. And so I don't feel like that's laziness. I just feel like that's it's a personality tempo. Um, and so I started early trying to find people that would do that for me. I can sell the work, I can get somebody else to do the work, and then I can go back to building, creating, dreaming. And in the beginning, I did what everybody does, which is I tried to find the cheapest people. And I think that that's the beginning of the flawed framework. If you pull any business book off a shelf, and I really mean just about any book from the greats, right? Like Covey's or Maxwell's or Dalio, it doesn't matter. Everybody speaks about people in terms of commodity. Um, we talk about people like people are commodities. And the way that entrepreneurs are taught to think is um, it's geared towards systems thinking. The idea, the thesis, and I believe this is global, is if you build a system that's good enough, all you need to do is find an easy to replace person to operate the system. And the emphasis is on the system and the value is in the system. And I think the exact opposite is true. The issue that I take with this is people aren't commodities. A commodity is something that's easily interchangeable. And so if you have an ear of corn and I have an ear of corn and you and I trade, neither of us are any better or worse off than we were moments ago. But if you have a graphic designer and I have a graphic designer and we trade, it doesn't matter if those people were born in the same place, have the same education, same experience, same background. Those are two entirely different human beings, right? If you have a CPA and I have a CPA, if I lost my CPA today, it'd be devastating. Um, People are, and this is where things will get fun for us, Serena. Feel free to challenge me if you want. I believe that the human being is a literal miracle. And I use the word literal with great intent because if you look up the meaning of the term miracle, it's an inexplicable event. It's something that cannot be explained. And I believe that about people. People are like we're this even if you don't believe in God, like an atheist, I think would maybe be more impressed by the idea that there's this ultra evolved super ape on this floating rock building things that again are unto themselves inexplicable. Like every extraordinary thing that's ever been done has been created by a human or something a human built. And to treat a person like a commodity is to nullify all the value available to you within humanity. As a matter of fact, the interesting thing about this post-AI world is people are only valuable if you look at them through the lens of what AI can't do. If you treat a person like a commodity, you're bringing a person in for things that a computer can do, and a computer doesn't need a bathroom break and doesn't take PTO and doesn't complain and doesn't have emotions. So we need to begin looking at people through an entirely different lens. Now, what sucks about that lens is it's not scalable. It's a non-scalable lens. And we've been taught as entrepreneurs like, oh, if it doesn't scale, I'm not going to do it. Here's the problem is AI scales. If your business is scalable, it means that it's not that it's not profitable, it's that in a post-AI world, it becomes it's lifted out of the purview of something that you get to do. It's brought into the realm of the trillion-dollar organizations that own the AI and they're going to do it for you. So it's still valuable. It's just not profitable to you. And we're seeing that with across industries. I think that the most stark reminder for us is info products. It's not that information's not valuable, supremely valuable, but it's so available that people aren't the way that they were 20 years ago. They're not buying courses, information, and, content because I can go to ChatGPT and it can teach me anything. So the question is no longer what scales or what can AI do? The question is what can AI not do? And that's the human endeavor. And that's the way to start hiring people and looking for people. And we're taught the exact opposite. And when you begin looking for miracles, you'll find them. You're going to find whatever you look for. So if you look for
Mm.
someone who's going to be a cog in the machine and just sit on the assembly line and do as they're told, you'll find that. And guess they're not fun to work with. That's when you get people who are like, it's so hard to find good help, and if you want something right, do it yourself. And it's like, well, yeah, because you went and found yourself a person who's acting like a commodity. And I
Mm.
actually believe that every human being has the ability to be a miracle with the right lens on them. So you could take someone who'd be true, I call them Pareto Talent. It's the name of my business. It's named after the Pareto distribution. A fraction of your input results in the majority of your output. That's the Pareto distribution. So look for Pareto Talent. Look for people who who bring and yield that result. And the same person in two different environments can be Pareto talent in one environment and could be just, a bump on a log in the other. And we
Mm.
have to look for and expect miracles out of people, and then you'll achieve miracles.
Mm. I've interviewed people before that were speaking on the same subject of hiring, and there's a huge difference between people who are servicing existing large corporations or the legacy businesses and such that have achieved significant growth on their own as entrepreneurs, and the ones that are servicing the old corporations have this kind of a rigid, as you say, legacy style that is replaceable by AI. So yes, they're talking about hiring for specific skills and so on, as the textbooks say. But then we have the other side, which are the growth entrepreneurs, and they all speak to the same fact as you're speaking, which is hiring for energy. Does the person fit? I mean, there's a difference now of I suppose, of how others have defined the right hire and how you would define it. But what I've heard until now is that some hire for a cultural fit, for like an extension of a worldview. So they're hiring another person with a similar worldview to them, as their first hires at least. And what is your view? Who do you hire then? If you're hiring for miracles, what is the person that you're looking? Is it okay? Let me put the question differently. Is it your point of view that is different, or are you actually hiring? Are you projecting your point of view to the person you're hiring, and so you make them successful, or do you hire successful people based on your view of a miracle?
I think it's both. Such a good question. I think we need to meet in the middle. It's like a puzzle piece that has to fit. I have to be willing to see you as more than a cog in the machine. And you have to be willing to see yourself as more than a cog in the machine. And there are employees. I have a brother like this. He's technically my cousin. I love him to death, dearly and deeply. He's a phenomenal human. He's a phenomenal brother. He's a phenomenal father. He's a horrible employee. Like I'd never hire him. We've joked about it. Like I just and it is because he doesn't live to work. He wants to have fun. He wants to spend time with his daughters. He wants to clock in, clock out, not think about work. And that's the job that he does. Like when he's at work, I think he does a good enough job, but he's not breaking boundaries or, that's just not where his highest and best use is. And God bless people. A lot of people are like that. They're also not who I want to work with. I want to work with somebody who sees themselves as more than just a checkbox checker. You know what I mean? Like if you're just going to come in and check the box, the thing that's really interesting about him is he and I went to school together. He's smarter than I am. I know that for a 100% fact because he would outpace me academically. Um, so it's not about intelligence. There's a will to perform in this arena that I think is the critical prerequisite. So I need to look at you as somebody who can bring more to the table than I'm asking. And a lot of employers are not willing to do that. And you need to be willing to bring more to the table than is being asked. And a lot of employees are not willing to do that. And I think both of those groups, both of those demographics are nullified in value. The business that only wants people to do what they're told, they end up being that bureaucratic, they're the corporate version of the DMV. Like I just flew into town from DC. I was in DC for the 4th of July and I flew on American Airlines. And if you've ever flown on American Airlines, you know that they're going to get you from point A to point B and that's about it. And nobody's going to smile at you and you're not going to have a great experience and their customer service is garbage and their website is just good enough. And I had a cancellation and the credit for my cancellation didn't land in my account and I don't know why and it wasn't even worth messing with because it's American Airlines and you just know that they are just good. That's that entire demographic. Just do the job, check the box, increase the value of the corporation for the shareholders. And then you juxtapose that to some of and I'm a big fan of Southwest Airlines. I actually, every time I'm on Southwest, I feel like I have a great experience. And it's not fancy. It's not because you spend more money. Everybody, they don't even assign seats. There's no first class. But it feels like there's an expectation of more than is on the agreement. Like you can't look at American Airlines and you can't actually really define in black and white terms what they do wrong. Because it's like, dude, you were in DC and I got you to Phoenix. And along the way, I brought you a drink and your seat reclined as much as the other seat reclines. Like, what are you complaining about? But there's this ineffable, inexplicable, ethereal, ephemeral, disembodied energy to the endeavor that makes so much difference. It makes, and you can see when organizations begin to shift. Because I think the bigger an organization gets, and Southwest is actually headed in this direction. I remember I'm reading a book right now. I'm reading Power versus Force by David R. Hawkins. And the thing that's really interesting about this book is written in 1995, and he cites Walmart as this amazing example of an organization that treats their people well, and in exchange, those people treat their customers well, and you have all this loyalty. Now, 20 years later, I don't I don't view Walmart 30 years later, actually, I don't view Walmart as that beacon, right? They've outgrown that ability, and I think that's what happens when you end up bureaucratic and you grow to that size. Those leviathans have a really difficult time of doing what I'm talking about because, to go back to my original thesis, it's not scalable. So as a business scales, it inhibits its ability to treat people like miracles in direct proportion to that scale, which is good news for us because it means that small businesses and entrepreneurs have such a massive advantage. It's why every major innovation in the history of humanity has come from a small group of people. Apple
Mm.
was tiny, Google was tiny, OpenAI is tiny. It's these tiny, nimble, small, very meritocratic organizations, and they move mountains and they change the way that we engage with each other. And then they experience all the success and they explode in size. And Google now, I've been to Google's corporate office. They flew me down there to create training videos for them back when I had a Google Ads agency. And you've never seen a corporation more run by lawyers and attorneys than Google.
I
And it,
actually have an acquaintance who used to work for Google at the time of still at the founding team. When it was, I don't know, he was not a part of the founding team, but still when the organization was very small. And after a few years, I think after 5, 6 years, he said it's now a completely different organization.
yeah.
It's more like run like a corporation than a startup because he was there when it was still a startup. So
Yeah,
completely different
my
culture.
buddy Fred Vallis was employee 500. And 500 is probably that's still too big, but like he played street hockey with Sergey and those guys. Like I mean, he was it was small enough for him to be in direct contact with.
Contact, yeah.
Yeah. And he said the same thing. He's like, on a long enough timeline, it gets too big. And I think that it's a lag indicator, not a lead indicator. I think that it's not that the business gets too big to treat people like miracles. I think that when a business stops treating people like miracles, it inhibits its ability to grow and to create impact in the way that it was originally allowed. And that's when you see all the top talent start to, it's brain drain, right? Start to leave, and then
Mm.
they go do other things. That's the thing about Silicon Valley that's the most interesting is people are actually not chasing the money. They're chasing the impact. Now, does money come with impact? Sure, those two things tend to be tied, but the brightest, like the most extraordinary talent, they're not taking the biggest checks. And when you see it I just interviewed Tim Bratton from my show an hour ago. Tim, one IPO, one reverse IPO, started Rhapsody, changed the way the world listens to music, was the first person to ever get agreements with the five top major music labels. Brilliant human, was involved in the creation of the MP3 standard, like literal genius.
Mm.
And that's the thing that's really interesting when you talk to those folks is Tim worked on what like led him from the heart. Now, did he end up making hundreds of millions of dollars? He did.
Mm.
And it was that was the lag indicator. The lead indicator is like, where can I move the needle? And I think if we can look at people through that lens, as employers, we have the opportunity to benefit from what those people are capable of. Like that's the cool thing. 9 out of 10 people are not entrepreneurs. And that's okay. Like, thank God, right? Thank God. And so they need a forum. They need the four walls and a ceiling that an entrepreneur can create and say, hey, come do your magic thing, come do it here. But in order to do that, there are some rules you have to follow. You have to, like, authorship creates ownership. You have to treat them like a miracle. You have to treat them like a grown-up. You have to really honor their contribution. Entrepreneurs are really bad at that. They're like, so especially young entrepreneurs. I did this as a young man. You feel like you're king of the castle. It's my business. And I'm going to sit on my throne and you shall do as I say. And if not, off with your head type of thing. And think about the type of person that wants or would even be willing to work in that environment or that ecosystem.
Mhm.
Instead, let's bring people in and let's like really honor them and honor their contribution and pay them more than anybody else is willing to pay. When I say those words, entrepreneurs get so repelled, and it's so funny because the math works so massively in your favor. With the Pareto distribution, you have to pay 10% more than the high water mark to get a peak performer, to get Pareto talent, 10% more than the high water mark. Now, that's not nothing. Because let's say, just to use napkin math, because I'm a high school dropout and I like easy math. Let's say that the salary window is 80 to $100,000 for this role, just to use a round number.
Mm.
80 to $100,000 a year. Entrepreneurs are taught to try to hire somebody at 79,900, right? It's a commodity. And what do you do with commodities? You try to get the most for the least, right? Just like you do with beans or oil or corn. It's a commodity. Get the most for the least. So we're trying to squeeze the most we can out of somebody. And a person is a person is a person is a person. So, 80 to 100 grand as a financial analyst. And if you're a financial analyst in your title and you have the pedigree, you're all the same. You're a commodity. And when I tell people pay 10% more, they hear pay 10% more than 79,900. But what I'm telling them is pay 10% more than the high watermark. So if the window is 80 to 100, I'm asking you to pay 110. Now, the difference between 80 to 110 is a big swing. And so what people will say is, dude, I can't afford that. You don't understand my business. There's no way. The economics, blah, 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 blah. And they're full of it. Here's why. When you pay 10% more than the high watermark, you don't get 10% more or 50% more or 100% more. You get 5 times, 10 times, 100 times the output with Pareto talent. And this is a mathematical truism. I'm not being hyperbolic. It's a fact. When I built the number one ranked Google Ads agency in the world. I sold it to a SoftBank backed MarTech company for an 8-figure sum of money. And 8 figures isn't yacht money, but I never have to work again. Here's what's really fun about that. When I sold that business, one person, I had 80 employees, one person managed 40% of my revenue. One human being. His name was John Moran. He's the greatest Google Ads mind in the world. Now, most people see that and they look at it and what they see is they see existential crisis on a spreadsheet because they're like, oh no, key man risk. What are we going to do? And so what they do is they try to mitigate the risk, which really means they take a hierarchical structure, which is shaped like a pyramid, and they flatten the hierarchy. They ask for average. So they would take John Moran's clients and they'd spread them across other employees. But what you don't realize is if you take the client away from John Moran, you lose the client. You have to lean into the Pareto distribution. You have to lean into these extraordinarily talented people, and you can index in that direction. I built an agency at $100 million in ad spend under management, and I built it using what I think the the bottom of my hierarchy was built from the same material that other businesses have at the top of theirs. I was able to find these extraordinary, extraordinary humans, and because I got out of their way and I paid them better than they'd make domestically, and I let them work from home on a semi-flexible schedule, and I treated them like adults, and I let them do meaningful work, I profited massively. And I've so far I've created 6 multi-million-dollar businesses. I've had 2 exits. I've had 2 acquisitions. I have a portfolio of 15 companies right now. And I'm not overly stressed. I'm not working, you know what I mean? 80 hours a week. I spend a ton of time with my kids. I spend a ton of time traveling. And the only thing I'm doing is just finding really, really, really bright people and saying, hey, do you want to do this? And then
Mm.
I just get out of their way. And for the people that can't operate in that framework, I don't work with them. It's
So
it's
how do you
very
find them? Let's talk about that. I mean, in most cases, the salary is not announced up front. So this is not how you initially attract them. How do you pick up the right people? Is it law of attraction and intuition? How do you use, what do you do to get the right
Yeah.
people?
Oh no, I announced the salary up front. So the first thing I do is I go international. I'm gonna slander I'll offer some lip service, okay? And I'll just say that I really am grateful. My father's a Pakistani immigrant, my mother's American. I'm grateful I was born in a country that has opportunity for changing where you are in the social system because not all countries have that. And I think I'm proof of the model, right? Start as a welfare baby. I'm now a duck millionaire. I'm 40 years old. I'll probably have $100 million before I stop, would be my guess. That feels kind of easy based on my trajectory. And What we've done in this country, we've won. It's really easy to make a living. It's really easy to be my brother, who I mentioned earlier, who does just fine clocking in, clocking out. Top talent in the emerged world, let's say, in the Western world, doesn't want to work for a small business. They want to go to Google, Amazon, Microsoft, Apple, Facebook, right? Or to a startup, or most importantly, maybe, is they want to work for themselves. And they can make twice as much working half as long. So I believe that we have something of a labor crisis here. I don't think hiring domestically is the answer. What I would encourage people to do is go international. Because when you go to Latin America, North Africa, Eastern Europe, all of Asia, you're putting yourself in a position to, I mean, it's hubris to think the rest of the world doesn't produce as many brilliant people as we produce, but they're exposed to a fraction of the opportunities, a literal fraction of the opportunities. So here, a young person getting to work at Google is aspirational. If you're in Colombia or Ukraine or Philippines, getting to work for a US company is just as aspirational. They look at us the way that a kid here would look at Google. And you experience something that an employer in the US, at least, has never experienced, which is gratitude. We don't get that. Like when I try to hire kids here, it's shocking their behavior. First words out of their mouth is, "What's my title?" I had a kid whose name I won't say so I don't shame him. He had been working with me for 2 weeks, swear to God. And he came in and he informed me that he goes, "Hey, I have some buddies who are going to Paris, so I'm gonna be taking some PTO." Like didn't and that's the entire labor pool as far as I'm concerned. Like we have broken our and you almost want to be proud of it. You almost want to be proud of a society that's built ourselves to a point to where people actually do not need to work, right? And as an employer, that doesn't work. I go to where people are hungry, metaphorically and literally. And you can pay them multiples more than they'd make domestically. One of my best hires ever was a young man when I had my Google Ads agency. I hired out of India because Google had 3 offices in India and they had thousands of employees that had glass ceilings and could go nowhere. The average Indian employee was making, in Google, the average Indian Google Ads specialist was making $500 USD a month. $500. The young man I'm talking about was making $9,000. $9,000. Imagine for a moment making almost 10 times what your peers are making. He bought his parents the first house they'll ever own, bought himself a motorcycle, got himself married, which in India is a very extravagant and expensive affair. Now, I could afford to do that because he was the literal best. He managed my top client. My top client, now he had a slate of 20 some odd clients. One client, my top client, publicly traded supplement company, paid me $54,000 a month. That math's great. I'm getting 54 grand from one client. The kid has a slate of 20 clients, which was about average. He's getting 9 grand. He is thrilled. I also ended up kind of making him famous in the Google ad space because I started putting him in our YouTube videos. And most American employers would never take a fresh off the boat in India, Indian specialist and put them in front of clients, put them on major accounts. Because why would you do that? The Indians can only do grunt work. They're VAs. Just make them do the other stuff, and then we'll have somebody in the States do all the smart work. And I think we can flip that paradigm. My favorite story of all time is my current business partner. My current business partner was a student in Poland. He's Ukrainian by nationality, going to school in Poland. I found him at 20 years old. He's going to college. And I found him on Freelancer. I start paying this kid $1,200 a month, full time. And he ran through walls. He's the most adept problem solver I've ever met in my entire life. There's nothing I could throw him that he just wouldn't knock right out of the park. He becomes my tech lead, becomes the CTO of my company, manages my entire exit. He's now my business partner and my best friend. He owns 50% of Pareto Talent. It's actually a fun full circle moment. I took the best EA I've ever had and I built a business with him where he trains EAs. And that's possible. My first EA became my director of automations. My second EA became my director of social. So finding these people, go to where you can be the employer and stop trying to match salaries. People will go to the Philippines and like the average EA makes like 600 or $700 in the Philippines. Pay 3 grand. You know what I mean? Because otherwise you get average. Don't pay average, you get average. Pay $3,000 or 5,000 or whatever it is that the role can afford, but hold the bar insanely high. And that's what I tell people when I'm interviewing. I'm like, look, I have unreasonably high expectations. So you're going to earn whatever it is that I pay you. I'm not going to ask you to work. I want a solid 8 hours. It's Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. I'm not going to ask you to work yourself to the bone, but when you're working, you're on. And this is not a clock in, clock out. I can hide behind whatever. I expect real work. I have a whole framework for this. Your audience can have it. There's no paywall, there's no ascension. I wrote a book that includes templates, frameworks, a job board. You can download it at thehirebook.com. And I spent 20 years creating effectively a hiring funnel. And it's the job description I use. And once the job description is, there's a whole host of rules. I call them fly traps. So at the top of every job description, they have to put, I actually read the instructions in the subject line of their application. If they don't, it gets automatically filtered out. When they follow the instructions, I ask them questions like, if you're an animal, what kind of animal would you be and why? And there's a reason for that I talk about in the book that's actually kind of a Trojan horse. But I also ask them for little things like, hey, send me a link to your resume in a PDF format with this naming convention. Now, do I care that it's a link and not an attachment? Do I care that it's PDF and not one word? No. But you're a remote employee. I want to know you can pay attention to little instructions. And then I do things. This is really fun. Stop me if I bore you, Zarina.
No, actually, it's quite interesting. I do have questions running in my mind all the time, but I'm waiting for you
Yeah,
to finish
I'll
in
try to
hope that I
wrap up
remember my
this
questions.
the core framework of the
No,
hiring
it's
process.
good. Go
If
on.
you're paying that much more in a market, you're going to get overwhelmed by applications. So you have to have these fly traps to filter out the people that aren't going to follow instructions. So one of my favorite things to do is I will not do interviews in the beginning. It's weird because we're taught to hire using resumes and resumes and interviews tell you nothing, absolutely nothing. So instead, I wait for people to apply. They have to follow all the instructions. The formatting has to be good. And then I'll send an email and I'll say, hey, Zarina, thanks so much for applying. I really appreciate you following the instructions. I've been hiring for 20 years and I know enough to know an interview is going to tell me nothing until we work together. Here's what I'd like to do. I'd like to pay you in advance for 2 hours of time. And you want to go whatever rate works for that market. So like if you're in the Philippines, 20 bucks an hour is great. So I'll give you 40 bucks to do a 2 hour trial project. If you agree, send me your PayPal address and I'll pay you in advance. And I want to let them know I respect your time. I want the trial project to be something that I can hold to a paid expectation, a paid standard. They send me their PayPal. I send them the 40 bucks and then I don't follow up and I don't send them the trial project. And then I wait to see who follows up with me because it's a great filter to see who's going to scam me out of $40. You know, and
Mm.
you think to yourself like, well, gosh, Kasim, that's expensive. Is it? Because let's say you do this with 20 people, right? That's $800 to figure out who really wants it, who's forgetful, who's procrastinator. I've had people follow up 2 weeks later saying, hey, you sent me $40 and you never sent me the project. And then I'm like, yeah, thank God I didn't hire you, you
Ah,
know? So then you send the money in advance, you wait who follows up. And then when people follow up, I'll do things like you always want to make sure the project is closely tied to the role you're hiring for. You know, a graphic designer should get a graphic design project, a developer should get a development project. I send them access to something like a Dropbox account, for instance. I'll say, hey, in order to do this project, you need to log into this account. So here's the scope of work, and I'd never give them a deadline because I want to know they can manage expectations and they can communicate. So I say, here's the scope of work. How long do you think this will take? And let's say it's Monday, and you tell me you're going to have it to me by Friday. I say, great. In order to download all the assets, go here. I send them the wrong username and password, and I wait to see. Because if you tell me, if it's Monday and you tell me you're going to have it to me by Friday, and Thursday night I get this frantic email from you saying that the password doesn't work, I now know, oh, and that doesn't necessarily mean I won't hire you, but now I'm learning like who really is a peak performer, who's top talent. When you get, and I have hundreds of fly traps. I talk about them in my book. I give them all away for free. When you get to the bottom of this process, you have trained killers. You have bloodthirsty, deadly assassins. You have people that eat work alive. And then you just hire the one that you like the best. And it's not uncommon for me. I actually just did this. My EA retired, God bless her. She's a clinical psychologist. She's a child psychologist by trade. And she came to me and said, I need to go work with kids. That's my passion. And she's been with me for a couple of years. And so I was going to hire her replacement. And I ran my process, the whole thing, start to finish. And I ended up with people that were so extraordinary, I couldn't choose between them. I hired two. And what's cool about that is you create this team atmosphere where they learn together and they grow. And you have to have the work to justify that, obviously. But that's how I've grown my businesses. And when you really treat people like miracles, because that's what I'm doing, I make them solve problems. The trial project is not a fill in the blanks project. It's, hey, go solve this problem for me. And then get out of their way. Like, what happens next is something most entrepreneurs don't experience. They outrun you. I can't tell you how many times I have employees. I have one right now, Frida. I own seedoil.com with a partner, and she blows my mind. She sent me a text message the other day. I wish I had it accessible actually, because it's one of the coolest things I've ever gotten from an employee. She basically said, I've been thinking about um, our business, and I think the model that we're pursuing is flawed. And I actually think we should do this thing instead of that thing. She's a executive assistant that I found in, I think she's in Colombia. She's a 23-year-old girl that has never had a job before, I don't think, or at least not a significant one. And she ends up being one of the most proactive, creative, thoughtful, hardworking employees I've ever had. And it's because I just I just opened that opportunity up and gave her the chance to shine. How many people and how many organizations are potent weapons that we're just not giving the chance to like step up and and do what Frida's doing for me. So anyway, that got a little preachy. I'm gonna pause there. How did I do?
No, no, it's super interesting. And there's one thing that I'm wondering though. I mean, if we treat everyone as individuals and miracles, and considering that you have this hiring funnel that you've created for your businesses, how applicable is it to other entrepreneurs? Because it's your style, it's your personality that's been copied and created. Even the tasks that you give them have been created to fit the way you like to work with people, right? So are they actually also replicable? Because I use replicable, it probably fits in the same category as scalable. Do we need to replicate things, or is it just your approach that you're sharing that needs to be adapted to the entrepreneur's way of perceiving the world, doing things? Do you think this is replicable?
Yes, so it's the latter. I actually talk about this in my book. If you copy and paste what I do, you're going to get my results, which to your point is that's for me, not for you. People need to take the concept, the principle, and modify it. What I say in the book is you need to attract and repel. You need to, because most people just want to attract, and it makes sense. It's the funnel mentality. It's like I want as many applicants as I can. It's like I want as many leads as I can. Running a Google Ads agency, you learn very quickly you actually don't. One of the worst things that can happen to a business is too many leads. I had one of the largest foundation repair companies in the United States. They're private equity backed. They started running ads with us, and their P&L dropped by 30%. They started losing money. CFO calls me and says, "You guys are fired. We are done." And I'm like, "What happened?" And he goes, "The minute we started working with you, we lost money." And we dug into what was happening. We overwhelmed their phone bank. They're a lead generation company that all of a sudden they went from being able to answer every lead that was coming in to having 8, 9, and 10-minute hold times. So they went from closing 80% of their deals to closing 20% of their deals because they couldn't get on the phone. They couldn't get in front of a customer. And it's because our marketing worked so well. So we actually had to lift the barrier and they had to increase their capacity. And it's a fun story. They ended up being clients for almost a decade. Um, the same is true with hiring. You don't want everybody. You want to attract and repel. And so I create fly traps and questions that attract people that I want to work with and repel people that I don't. And everybody needs to do the same thing. And who you want to attract and who you want to repel are different than who I want to attract and who I want to repel. So the tactics will absolutely change. The strategy stays the same. Give people more than anybody else is willing to give them. Prerequisite number one, right? And I think that it's multifactorial, but people tend to kind of want the same things. Everybody wants financial abundance. What's really fun about employees is once you take the question of finances off the table, it's not a problem anymore. So just pay them more. Everybody wants freedom, right? Everybody, I mean, I know employers are like, if I let people work from home, they're not going to give me a full 8 hours. Who cares? I was talking about this to another friend I hope he never hears this because he'll know exactly what we're talking about. Really, really good guy, really close friend, really great entrepreneur. And he had a hard time hiring for this one particular role, and he finally found somebody in the role. And then he was complaining to me. He goes, "Dude, I don't think I'm getting 8 hours out of this guy." And I'm like, "Well, is he doing everything you want him to do?" And he's like, "Yeah." And I'm like, "Who cares? Like, what is this weird arbitrary line in the sand that we've decided? If the input output makes sense in the maths." So I think that if you give people more and you hold them to the highest standard, that's the principle. That's what's replicable. What more means to you is it different for every industry. And what the standard means to you is going to be different for you in every industry. But sticking with that principle, that's the funnel. And when you get people that come out the bottom, man, they're miracles. They're, I have so many. I have a young man you and I talked about before we started recording. I own AEO.co.
Oi, I'm sorry for that.
Oh, everything okay?
Yeah, I'm okay. I was just WhatsApp popped up out of nowhere on
Oh,
my
no, that's fine.
desktop. Yeah.
I own AEO.co. Answer engine optimization is going to overtake search engine optimization as the top strategy for attracting organic traffic. Here's what's fun about that. I have more data than any human on the planet about AEO. I have 5 employees that do nothing and have done nothing for the last 9 months but study how LLM source their citations. I've written the book. I've created the community. I own school.com/AEO. I own a YouTube channel that's about to be the biggest in AEO. And when I say I really mean Julian, who's started as my EA and helped me crack he's the one that wrote the book. He's the one that does the study. He's the one that manages those employees. He's the one that creates the community and moderates it. And I show up 90 minutes every Thursday and I talk for a little bit and review some of his work. And he and I meet on a semi-regular basis. And Julian's a miracle. But God forgive me for saying this because I really respect and love him and value him. There are other Julians out there. You know what I mean? Like there are other people that if you give them the chance to do what Julian did or do what Frida did, they will astound you.
Yeah.
And so I hope that answers your question because I agree with you. Like you don't want to just copy and paste what I'm doing, but you can take the framework and apply it to your business. And
Mm.
that's the best. It's Serena, it's free. Like I'm holding nothing back. I have no course to sell anybody. I help place executive assistants. If somebody wants to hire an assistant through me, I'd love to help them with that. Most people don't want or need that, and you can do it cheaper yourself. Everything that I do, the entire process, including all the templates, the checklist, the cheat sheet, it's all free. It's all free because my goal in life is to help people in emerging nations find meaningful work. And if I can do that, I want my name to be synonymous with the word hire. If somebody says, "Oh, I'm looking to hire," I want somebody to go, "Oh, you need Kasim's book." And so we're just giving it away, batch and blast, because I know on a long enough timeline, I'm going to end up benefiting from that anyway.
Fantastic. Thank you. So, what was the name of your channel and of your book?
Oh,
The
go to
YouTube channel.
thehirebook.com, thehirebook.com, and people can download the book, have access to all the frameworks. There's an audio book that's free too. And my only ask is just follow the steps. Don't get lazy because it's hard the first time. So if you're listening to this, it's not an insignificant amount of work to build this funnel, just like any funnel. Creating the trial project is hard. With ChatGPT, it's a lot easier, but it's still difficult. And when you do it the first time, you're going to make some mistakes and it's going to be a little arduous. But once it's built, you will have that funnel forever. And as your business grows, all you ever need to do is turn that thing on, and now you have, whatever that particular resource might be, and it becomes easier to modify too. So you get to modify the one funnel that you built for subsequent funnels. So just
Okay.
try it. I mean, you're 2 weeks away from the greatest hire you've ever had in your entire life.
Okay, one follow-up question on the process of the funnel. Um, so it seems that you're hiring in terms of productivity and work ethics. Where does the personal fit come in
Yeah, it's
between you
both. So
and
I say hire for will, train for skill. Here's my petulant opinion. I think if let's say you're hiring for a content creator, I think you are far, far, far better off, especially in a post AI world. I think you're far better off finding somebody who's smart, proactive, motivated, and an adept problem solver, and a mediocre or even poor content creator, then finding somebody who's a great content creator, but doesn't have the rest of those things.
Mm.
Because with AI, the thing that is actually easier to supplement is it's the nuts and bolts of the work. And somebody who's smart and proactive and thoughtful and a good problem solver is going to be able to troubleshoot and audit and improve upon AI created work, where somebody who's good at the work kind of just got usurped. The only thing they bring to the table is the thing that the AI mechanism does. Now, does that mean you just wholesale throw out skills? No, obviously not. Like if you need a Ruby on Rails software developer, you need somebody who knows Ruby on Rails. And I'd be really cautious about things like you have to have 5 years in the position, you have to have this much experience, you have to have this background, you have to have this education, you have to have this degree, you have to have this credentials. Like those things to me are secondary at best, if they're even relevant. Get really, 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 really clear on what hard skills are necessary to do this job. And far too often, the hard skills required are created by the person that's currently in the role, who has a very inflated opinion about who they are and what they had to go through. Because if I had to go through a 6 year process to get my degree, then you need to, you know what I mean? And I've seen very, very frequently the ability to accelerate people's capabilities to match the output of a specific role beyond what credentialing would require. So, and I'm trying to dance around me saying that I think college degrees are bullshit because I do at this point. I understand the need for that framework 40 years ago, but I think not only is it antiquated, you end up attracting people that have a sense of entitlement that I think is outdated. They show up wanting to be paid more, wanting to be treated differently. And I'm like, dude, not only are you not any better than the dropouts that I've been hiring, you actually come with bad habits and, this sort of blue blood loafers with no socks feeling that makes me think you don't work as hard. I like people with breaks in their resumes that worked in food service, that just, what I mean, drove an Uber. I mean, those end up being like really sharp, scrappy problem solvers. So I would just be real careful about deciding ahead of time who's right and who's wrong, because I think you're probably going to be wrong.
Mhm. Let me clarify my question. I understand what you're saying, but
Sorry.
I actually wanted to drill down a bit deeper. We leave behind the hard skills that are, let's say, they're the basics that you may be hiring for, or second level. And then second level is the work ethics and the character of the person, or the way they respond and whether they fit your values regarding work. Let's call it work ethics. But then there's the personal fit. Is there something beyond work ethics that you're considering when you're already in the process of interviewing the people?
Oh, yes, ma'am. Thank you for that. Sorry. I really appreciate the clarification. Yes, I think that culture is the most important part of your job as a founder, managing culture. And so people who are a bad culture fit can be devastating no matter how effective they are. As a matter of fact, really effective people tend to kind of be bulls in a china shop. They hurt feelings and they throw other people off and they rub people the wrong way. I think that a lot of this can be solved for in your funnel. So one of the things that I do in my job description is I speak in a very colloquial fashion. I'll actually use a very mild amount of profanity. Like my job posting says the word bullshit. We don't put up with bullshit, and what I'm looking for is I want that person who doesn't like that to just not apply. And you can seed in cultural indicators throughout your process. And at the very, very, very end, that's the purpose of the interview. The purpose, because if you get to the interview process, it means you know how to do the job, you know how to follow instructions, you're going to be good at this. But do I feel like there's an energetic, cultural, and personality fit? And, that might actually be the most important layer, because I don't want to bring somebody in that's going to throw the culture off in one bad apple, man. And I've experienced that. I actually had a young lady, we're still friends. I had a young lady come work with me at Solutions 8 who was so hardworking and cared so much. And she was so repellent to the entire rest of the everybody. And it got to a point to where nobody could work with her. I kept having to move her in departments because I was impressed with her and I liked her, but she just had a couple of you can call them personality quirks that really threw off the team atmosphere. And, in a long enough timeline, I found a way to isolate her, which was basically, maybe I won't say actually, because I don't want to reveal her identity in case she ever hears this. But it was a problem. And it's a problem. I've made that mistake before. I think it's still a risk. And to be honest with you, I think if you find those people, you get them out quick. I like hire slow, which is what the funnel is. That's a slow process. Hire slow, fire quick. When you know somebody's not a fit, I rarely see course correction as an opportunity. I'm just like, hey, and I hire that way too. I let people know everybody I hire is on a 60 to 90-day trial basis. I need to make sure this is a fit for you. I have to make sure it's a fit for me. And I ask them, what happens if this doesn't work out? Because I don't want to be the one that, oh, you left this job that you had for 6 years and you were about to achieve tenure and you came and worked for me and we found out it didn't work 65 days into it. So I
Mhm.
make sure that they think it's a viable risk too.
Thank you so much, Kasim. Kasim Aslam, where can people get a hold of you if they need to contact you, or do you only send them to the book? Is there
Yeah,
any
no, you can go to
interaction?
kasim.me, Kasim.me. The book is free. You can all my links are there, all my socials are there. So would love to engage with folks and, have any follow-ups. And if there's other shows I should be on, please reach out. I'm on a podcast tour. So
Fantastic. Thank you. It was a pleasure.
thanks for having me. I appreciate you.